Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Defiant live weekly recap of all the news that happened in crypto and DeFi. We're here to analyze the biggest stories with our print team. We have our head of news, YYC Trader, and staff reporters, Owen and Alex. We usually also have Ed on board, but he couldn't make it today. So, let's get started. Another eventful week in crypto. Another week dominated by SBF FTX news. I wonder, if there will ever come a time when we won't talk about this in these weekly recaps. But this week is not the time. So. We'll start with the latest news on that whole saga with Sam Bankman-Fried saying that he's willing to testify before Congress. In this Twitter thread where he announced this, he also gets into this ongoing, fight with CZ, the Binance CEO. He also denies hunting down 3AC. So lots to unpack there. Earlier this week, SBF has continued to go on this media tour, and he's shooting himself in the foot now, and appears to have incriminated himself. So we'll get into what happened there in those interviews. We're also seeing some ramifications and ripple effects coming to DeFi, with bad debt piling up in some DeFi protocols. We will also talk about Vitalik's favorite things. So a little bit of a Christmas theme going on there. But Vitalik had a really interesting blog post talking about what excites him the most in crypto. He also had a different thread talking about kind of the dangers of how to improve DAO governance. So we'll get into that. There was also news in the kind of staking realm, if you can call it that, with ApeCoin and Link staking going live this week. And finally, we have an update on the Ethereum roadmap. So lots to talk about. And before we get to it, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Railgun, which enables privacy in crypto. And we will talk more about them in a bit. So to start, let's start with the latest news today. Alex, you want to take it away?
Sure. SBF, the former CEO of FTX, had time on his hands this morning. He was hanging out on Twitter, and just there were a flurry of tweets, news-making tweets. Maybe the most important one is he had committed to appearing before a U.S. House of Representatives committee next week on let me pull up my calendar to see exactly which day this is. It's December 13th, which would be Tuesday. So Maxine Waters, chair of the Financial Services Committee, had asked him, I think it was last week now, to appear before the committee and testify on FTX on what exactly went wrong. And he was hesitant. I don't have access to FTX data anymore. I can't give you the full picture. And she rightfully, in my opinion, said, well, you have been going on this media tour. You've given hours of interviews. You seem able to tell a pretty thorough story of what you claim to have gone wrong. So So we think you've got enough information. And this morning he said, okay, fine. And I quote, I still do not have access to much of my data, professional or personal. There's a limit to what I can say. Won't be as helpful as I'd like. But if you think I'm going to be useful, then I'm willing to testify on the 13th. He went on to say that he could talk about FTX US's solvency. If you'll recall, he keeps saying that as far as the United States arm of FTX is still solvent. Pathways that could return value to users internationally. I'm interested in hearing what he's got to say about that. What he thinks led to the crash, and then lastly, my own failings. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I personally don't always have high hopes for these kind of committee hearings because it's often an opportunity for politicians to grandstand since they know that all eyes are going to be on them. And so, whether they really ask illuminating questions that help us get to the root of what went wrong, or whether they just take the opportunity to score political points, we'll see. He had also been invited to testify before a Senate committee the next day, Wednesday, December 14th. He and his attorneys did not respond to that request by a deadline that they were yesterday. So we still don't know whether that's going to happen. In other Bankman-Fried news this morning, he also denied a couple of allegations that were thrown at him by his rivals, one of them being Su Zhu, co-founder of 3 Arrows Capital. 3 Arrows collapsed this summer. Everybody pinned the blame for its collapse in part on the crash of Terra Luna and on the own shenanigans of 3 Arrows co-founders. They went silent for a while after the collapse. They've recently resurfaced to basically dance on Bankman-Fried's grave and say, he was actually the one that put us under. We were trading on Alameda, which is the affiliated trading firm that he also found, that Bankman-Fried had founded, and they were hunting our positions on Alameda because they could, they could see all of this stuff happening on the back end and screwed us over in that way. And so they've been making this case for the past couple of weeks on Twitter. And again, this morning, Bankman-Fried said, I made a lot of mistakes this year. This was not one of them. He didn't get into any details. He simply denied the claim, said, basically, stop bothering me, go focus on your own problems, of which there are many. The kind of redemption arc that the 3 Arrows founders have been trying to cultivate. And I should note that, as more information comes out, the whole consensus as to what happened might change, but the redemption arc so far has not been well received by most people on crypto Twitter, who are just skeptical, to say the least. And then the last thing is Bankman-Fried and Changpeng Zhao, the founder of Binance, got into a little spat this morning with CZ calling Bankman-Fried unhinged in their negotiations over Binance exiting its investment in FTX. You might recall that Binance was one of FTX's first investors. They put a lot of money into the fledgling crypto exchange and last year exited that investment. They got, the number escapes me now, but I think it's around $2 billion, a lot of which came in the form of FTT. And then when they sold that, or announced that they would sell that FTT last month, everybody saw what happened. So let me actually pull up the exchange real quick.
So it's a tweet I have on we have up here, right?
Yes. Sam was, when we decided to pull out as an investor, that he launched a series of offensive tirades at multiple Binance team members, including threatening to go to extraordinary lengths to make us pay. We still have those text messages. SBF called that a lie and kind of turned it back on CZ, saying that was actually your negotiation tactics that I found distasteful, but we decided to, buy out your investment anyway because we didn't want you as one of our investors anymore. So
it seems like this would be like really easy to like prove who's lying here. It's just
I
like
mean,
whoever
Susie says
has
he
the
has
text, yeah,
text.
message, yeah.
Show us the text. Proof of text.
We want to see the text, CC. And it looks like now, like all of the fallen crypto kings of the past are wanting to, pin their failings on SBF, right? Because it's like, okay, Susu is coming out and wanting to blame SBF on Three Arrows crashing, and I think Do Kwon as well tweeted something, was blaming SBF on the Luna Terra collapse. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I
the
think
North Korean hackers who attacked Axie Infinity earlier this year are going to blame it on SBF soon.
right, yeah. So we'll have to see how all this develops, but pretty convenient, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I think everyone should own what they've done.
It is. I mean, Ed pointed out last week that SBF may be playing some kind of game which we don't understand about, just kind of being in the media so much that we almost get bored or something. And I mean, I wonder if I don't know how you guys feel. I almost feel like that's working. I'm just like, oh my god, like what's going on now? Like I've written the phrase FTX's collapse. So
oh my god, I know.
I need a new word.
Yeah. I'm like going through the Oxford English Dictionary's book of synonyms, like collapse, downfall.
I know, collapse is my bread and butter. That's downfall though. All right.
Yeah. Okay, so in other more SBF news this week, we also looked at how, in SBF on this media tour appears to have incriminated himself. So he was on a couple of interviews. He was on the on this Mario Nawfal Twitter space, and then he went and spoke with CryptoZilla. Do you guys?
Is it CoffeeZilla?
CoffeeZilla. Sorry about that. Yeah. So he went on. He gave an interview to this YouTuber CoffeeZilla, and apparently what happened there is that he in both of those interviews, SBF admits to having commingled user funds, and that was a bit of a change from his previous narrative, where if you guys remember, his defense was there was just mismanagement, that accounts were mislabeled, that he didn't know what was going on. But in these two interviews, what was different was that he basically admitted to using the funds of FTX depositors of the exchange. So just users of the exchange who were trusting their funds with them, and he admitted to using those funds for to use in Alameda, and to use in margin positions, and he used the excuse that, like, money is fungible, it can be used in different ways. But that's not really how it works. It's like, okay, I give you my money not for you to use in like really risky margin positions. I give it to you to custody it, and for me to be able to take back whenever I need it. So I think that was an interesting turn of events. There's a lot of speculation on whether that can be used in court, like legally. But yeah, we'll just have to wait until those legal proceedings are underway. But it was an interesting, shift in the narrative so far.
Yeah, that's big if you can nail him, because I think I think before this week there were no sentences that indicated that he was actually using customer deposits, which is I think what a lot of this rests on.
Exactly. Yeah. So and like the terms of agreement of FTX was, it was pretty clear that, that was not what users were agreeing to. So maybe this is a way to get him closer to taking responsibility for what happened. So and then another video we did also on SBF was mapping the contagion. We keep seeing even more ripple effects, and this was actually our emerging video star Alex who who did this video. So maybe you can walk us through just like the main kind of additional dominoes that we're seeing.
Yeah, and this is stuff that we've probably touched on in weekly recaps in the past, kind of a roundup of everything that had happened since that first Mapping the Contagion episode we did on November 15th, I think. I mean, the big one, BlockFi filed for bankruptcy. Then everybody was wondering whether Genesis would file for bankruptcy because it had holes, which is, the big sign, like this year, every time an exchange or a lending platform halts withdrawals, it seems within a couple of days or weeks, they file for bankruptcy. Genesis hasn't actually done that yet. But people were really nervous because as bad as it would be for Genesis to file for bankruptcy, its parent company, DCG, is kind of like low-key one of the biggest players in crypto and has, it's got a lot of funds locked up in Grayscale, for example. And if it were forced for whatever reason to liquidate Grayscale, that would have just a catastrophic impact on the market, dumping $10 billion worth of Bitcoin and hundreds of millions of dollars more in other crypto assets into the market. What else? So this week, Orthogonal Trading appears to be insolvent. They had been using Maple Finance, a platform that basically allows institutional investors who've been whitelisted to borrow crypto assets, and they had allegedly told other players, like counterparties, that they were fine after FTX collapsed, and those counterparties now believe that Orthogonal had been lying about this, that they continued making payments on loans that they had taken as they tried to trade, make up for their FTX loss by trading over the past couple of weeks unsuccessfully, and then missed a $10 million payment. I believe it was this past Sunday. Trading firm Oros had also missed a payment on Maple. Owen, you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah, just one thing that didn't make sense to me exactly is it felt like if Orthogonal Trading, as I believe, I don't remember if it was M11 or Orthogonal's credit entity said, but that Orthogonal Trading had lost money because they held it on FTX. And one thing that I didn't really get an answer to, because I reached out to Orthogonal Trading and they didn't say anything, but I thought it would be, I thought, why didn't they come clean initially if they just lost their funds on FTX? That seemed like they could have said, that's our mistake, that happens to everyone. But now it's like, now you like tried to make it all back. For some reason, that doesn't totally make sense to me. Or I don't know if that was a blunder on their part or we're missing part of the story, but it seems kind of suspect to me that they wouldn't just like own up and be like, yo, it happened to a lot of people, happened to us too. So
entirely speculation. But I mean, when FTX went down, a lot of companies had their money custodied on FTX. I mean, people were saying like, we're going to learn over time who had their money there. Some people fessed up immediately. Other people took their time, because I mean, you don't want to admit that you just lost like millions, tens of millions of dollars, some of which maybe you owed to other people.
Yeah.
And now, you're going to get, if you had borrowed it, you might get margin called or something. And if everybody tries to get whatever money is left, but there isn't enough for everybody, then all of a sudden you have to declare bankruptcy. It's like,
it's admitting to that, starts this spiral effect, right?
Yeah.
Where you say, oh, like we had money there, then your users get, are freaked out and pull all the money you have left, and then that causes more problems and liquidations, and so I think that's maybe why some of these entities just didn't admit to having their money there. And maybe that happened to orthogonal, but it is kind of speculation at this point.
Another crypto lender, one that I actually hadn't been familiar with, Salt, they halted withdrawals November 15th. What else? Accusation, or not accusations, but just the fact that this project or that project might be facing insolvency. I mean, that's been flying around. Amber Group earlier this week had to deny that it was insolvent.
And then I think on your point earlier about all this speculation too about DCG and Grayscale and how they're affected. We saw news out today actually from Grayscale that their DeFi fund is now live and trading. So just reminder that Grayscale is the issuer of GBTC, the like famous Bitcoin Trust, and ETH, and the Ether Trust, and now they are adding to their portfolio of funds available to institutional investors this DeFi Trust begins trading on OTC markets. And we were looking at its constituents, and it's based on the CoinDesk DeFi Select Index with Aave, Compound Curve, Maker, and Uniswap. So this is interesting. It seems like Grayscale is signaling it's business as usual, and they have they're just like continuing to roll out trading products even in the midst of all this turmoil. What do you guys think of this Grayscale DeFi Trust? Will be interesting to see how it trades.
It'll be really interesting to see how it trades, because the narrative that's emerged is CeFi continuously implodes and DeFi just keeps chugging along doing its thing. I guess with the exception of Terra Luna earlier this year, but if there's a growing consensus that DeFi, a lot of the loans are over collateralized, there's little chance that you'll see these kind of issues. And if something does happen, you can see the storm like well before it reaches shore. It'll be interesting to see whether, the story of GBTC is that it's been trading at a discount this whole time. So, does that happen with this fund? I don't know.
I think it does, because there's no retail demand for crypto, let alone DeFi tokens at the moment, right? Like stock markets have taken a beating this year. And and honestly, it's become so much easier for retail to access the tokens directly, right? Because you have so many apps like I'm not sure if Robinhood lets you buy DeFi tokens yet, but stuff like Dharma and things that let you kind of directly on-ramp fiat into and do DEX swaps. So personally, I don't think this product would, at least right now, get too much investor interest from retail, and we'd probably end up seeing this one at a discount too.
Yeah, but to your point, Cam, it will be interesting to see. If institutions can buy this without the same kind of legal hurdles that they would have otherwise, it'll be interesting to see whether JP Morgan's, which have been, I guess, using Aave at least in a small way. Do they see value in the token?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, remember how these trusts work? They are initially sold onto institutions in private placements. Then there's a lockup period. After that lockup period, they can sell those shares of the trust to retail. So I believe what's happening here is that now this DeFi fund is available for institutions. I don't know that will we have to wait until this lockup period is over to see how it's how retail responds to this? Do you guys know when the lockup period?
I'm not sure. I thought it was live.
I think it's done.
Yeah.
I think that's
Okay.
like the lockup is over because so the fund was created in July 2021. So we were still like in like bull market times, right? So whoever kind of participated in that private placement would have done so, when everything looked very rosy for DeFi.
Mhm.
So and now I think they said there's like 230,000 shares outstanding or something. So which isn't too much. So at the current price of 100 and something, right? Is that what we saw on the index?
Shares outstanding, yeah, it's shares outstanding. It's about 200,000 and
3 million in
what
AUM. Like it's really
just
nothing.
3 million, yeah. So and I mean and
Nice
this
performance.
launched right and this launched like last year, like in the middle of the bull run. So it's pretty tiny. So yeah, I think you're right. Where we see that, we'll probably we won't see a premium on this. Like I also don't see a lot of just retail demand for these tokens, but we'll be tracking this and keep you guys updated as always on DeFi markets. So will be interesting to see.
Yeah, if it starts trading at like a significant discount like GBDC, it might be worth picking up for the next cycle, right? And sitting on it.
Yeah. Okay, before we get to the next news, which we have Link and ApeCoin staking, bad debt piles up in DeFi. But before we get to that, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Railgun. Until now, crypto privacy has come at the expense of DeFi functionality. The brand new and high-tech Railway private wallet on web and mobile lets you enjoy the world of DeFi while staying completely private. Create an invisible wallet balance, sell and buy tokens privately and anonymously like a dark pool, and enjoy degen DeFi goodness without revealing sensitive information like your address, balances, or transaction history. Railway is available on Ethereum, BSC, and Polygon. Yeah, so check out Railgun's Railway wallet. And yeah, thanks again to them for sponsoring this video and our weekly recap. And for those of you who are following, it would be great if you can give us a like and share so more people can join these live streams and get to know this weekly panel that we do. So if you can take a minute to like this video and share. And with that, let's get to the second half of our weekly recap. Yeah, like tons going on, and we have been just tracking very closely how DeFi is being affected by the FTX collapse, and we're already starting to see signs of trouble. We've been reporting on how unsecured lenders are affected, but now even regular collateralized lenders are seeing bad debt too. Owen, do you want to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I guess I would say that we did write a story on bad debt, and I think it was partially catalyzed by a dashboard by RiskDAO, and we have, as Cami said, been watching out for bad debt on some of these collateralized platforms, as we saw Aave, took on, I think it was originally 1.2 million of debt, although the dashboard in question shows 2.1. But I think everyone is just wary. Everyone's on edge generally, right? And and in the wake of Abraham Eisenberg's attack on Mango last month, everyone is on edge in these collateralized lending platforms. So we did write a story kind of outlining a state of play of collateralized lenders, with Venus on Binance with 52 million in bad debt, Aave with 2.1, Iron Bank with 27 million. But I believe at least Venus's main attack happened in May 2021. So I would just say, while we have seen bad debt accrue to these lending platforms, it's not necessarily super new and not necessarily something that's happening in the wake of FTX's collapse per se, or because of FTX's collapse. But it's more that everyone is looking at this now because people are worried there's less liquidity in the system, and the less liquid tokens have made some of these platforms more vulnerable to taking on bad debt. And we've seen adjustments made by Aave and Compound, reducing the amount of some of these low liquidity tokens that you can borrow in response to that. But there haven't necessarily, there's no panic in the collateralized lending market, at least from where I'm standing. So that's how I read that piece of news.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, to look at inverse finance with 85% of bad debt to TVL, that seems like that, and this protocol Moonwell, those two seem like outliers here with over 50% of bad debt to TVL.
Fair enough.
The rest seem like pretty, I mean, at least in the single digits still. So like you said, I was not a full-blown kind of contagion or DeFi lenders going bad story, but something to watch.
Totally. Yeah. And I think it came as a revelation that collateralized lenders too can be left with bad debt. For me, I thought that was almost impossible in a certain way, but as we've been learning, it's not. And I think a lot of that has to do with the liquidation mechanisms and how quickly you can process liquidations. So
yeah, exactly. Okay, and then changing gears a little bit. This is on Chainlink unveiling or enabling link staking this week. So quick anecdote, like I remember one of the first interviews I did on the Defiant podcast, I think it was like back in 2020, was with Sergey Nazarov, and he in that podcast he mentioned, oh yeah, we're close to rolling out link staking. And I remember that was like one of the first podcasts or like tweets that went a little bit viral from the Defiant. Like Link Marines were just like going crazy with those statements. So, and that was like back in 2020. So this has been, I think, a long time coming. Like the Link holders have been waiting for this moment. So now it's finally here.
Right on. Yeah, well, Cami, you might know more than me about this one. But yes, link staking did launch, and it's just capped for the ETH USD Oracle, and also capped at only 25 link can be staked on that price feed. Although obviously, it being the ETH price feed, it's pretty important. But that's the main news, is that Link will have some additional utility built into the token, and I didn't know it had been on the roadmap for so long. But and I think Link was up, I think, about 32% going into the launch of staking, although actually over the past 7 days it is down 10%, so I'm not sure if people are selling the news there. But it'll be interesting to see whether Link kind of becomes more of a standard behemoth or kind of standard for base rate of yield in the way that people kind of peg Ethereum's staking rate as a benchmark, so to speak. So.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how this token model works in terms of, making the Oracle more secure and incentivizing more accurate data. That's something we're watching closely as well here in the Defiant for our own data platform. So I'm really interested to see how this works. And speaking of staking, ApeCoin too. There was also staking news there. YYC, you want to walk us through this one?
Sure. So ape staking has been, promised for a while now, and the actual staking rewards aren't live yet. They go live on the 12th in 3 days. But the Ape Foundation basically opened up the staking contract so people could pre-stake their tokens. And when I wrote the roundup, it was at about 35 million. But checking this morning, it's already crossed 100. So as of right now, more than 27 million ApeCoin worth about $110 million has been staked. So yeah, so clearly the apes don't want to miss out on a single block of rewards once they go live, right? Yes. And I mean, everyone's been kind of obsessed with and fretting over the FTX contagion and stuff in markets, but there's been a lot of activity in NFT land while all this has been playing out. We had Art Basel, the conference in Miami at the start of the month, and there was by all accounts from people who were there, like the parties were sold out, like full attendance, and people are having a great time. I mean, it seems like the vibe was a lot different from NFT NYC, where people were like more depressed, and it didn't seem like it was taking off too much. And there was a lot of cool stuff happening this time. Like you could, like a lot of artists and projects were giving out mint passes and stuff to people who showed up in real life and like completed like these quests, like treasure hunts and things all over Miami. I know a few people who got to mint X copies decal, which has a floor of about 4.5 ETH just for being there. So it would have paid for your trip essentially, nice. Right? If you managed to grab a few of these. And yeah, a lot of projects have come out with announcements. Bake is collaborating with Timex to create 500 bespoke watches, which you can see on the screen there. These are priced pretty high compared to Timex's regular offerings, just the Ape Premium, I guess. So there was some chatter about people not being too happy about that, saying just because we're Ape holders doesn't mean you can rip us off, right?
Yeah, there's like a Snoopy Timex watch that I looked at a while back. It was like $150.
Yeah,
oh my God.
These are like
Snoopy's great.
And I think maybe they dropped the price to 1.5, but that's still pretty expensive for a Timex, right?
Yeah.
No, and then I mean the Penguins, despite the bear market, they've hit an all-time high in terms of ETH. They crossed 4.2, 4.3 ETH, I think, and I mean the turnaround has just been great to see, right? Like at this time last year, this was exactly when like the founder Cole and etc. were being pilloried by the community because they dropped those fishing rods as Christmas presents, right? And that which actually didn't contain anything at all. So the floor price had dipped as low as like half an ETH or so. And I remember because I almost picked one up back then, and I was like, no, this thing's going to zero. I can't do it. And then there was the whole buyout talks with there was, I forget what's his name. 999, right? He was the other guy who was interested in the brand, and then eventually, of course, Luca Nets ended up making the deal, and then since then it's just been a one-way up only, right? Which is, it's interesting to see that a community managed to kind of boot out the founders, like stage a coup and like take the project in its own direction. So Yep, and then we have the airdrop from Blur, the NFT marketplace. The second airdrop is live, so if you did have any activity on the platform in November, you can now go and claim the airdrop. The token is expected to launch in January, so I know most NFT DJs have high hopes for the airdrop, but let's see.
Nice.
Yeah. I used Blur just to try it out this week, and
Ooh, you get an airdrop.
Oh no, I didn't. No, I didn't. Of course, I missed it.
Okay.
I'm working. I don't have time, but I did use it, and it was slick. So appreciate that.
Yeah, you got to keep up with DeFi Alpha, man.
You know what I do. I really do. I agree.
Yeah.
That's a New Year's resolution.
Wait, this is a perfect time to give a shout out to both DeFi Alpha and the NFT Roundup, which YYC leads both. The NFT Roundup we publish between either Friday or Monday. I think now we're making it more consistently on Mondays, but it's this really nice summary of all the main NFT stories. And DeFi Alpha is our premium newsletter that goes out Fridays, which we do together with DeFi Dad. And that's where you would have been alerted to the Blur airdrop, and most of the biggest airdrops we've alerted to there. So you guys should subscribe and get all these alpha alerts there in our DeFi Alpha newsletter. So yeah, interesting to see that NFTs are not dead. They're very much alive. And Owen wrote a story pointing to just that. Activity on the Sound platform is really, skyrocketing.
Yeah. I talked to the Sound founder late last week, and we put together the story and put it out on, I think, Monday or Tuesday. But yeah, we've seen mints double by artists in each of the last 2 months. So we saw 10,000 mints by artists on Sound, which is an NFT platform. They have a marketplace, and they also have like listening parties for when people drop, and they have like an activity feed. So it'll kind of be almost your Twitter home screen for Sound NFTs. And yeah, I mean, to YYC's point, it is interesting to see the NFT market kind of chug along outside of the macro crypto and just like macroeconomic picture as a whole. And that's the point that David Greenstein told me. He was like, yeah, artists are making music regardless. So I think it is an interesting point that, I mean, NFTs are silly sometimes, but it's also like as a way to onboard crypto and give a non-correlated asset class. I think NFTs may actually kind of prove to be an interesting case study, or the durability of them, especially the art-focused NFTs. So yeah, it was interesting. Obviously, NFT volume is down, I think, over 90% in terms of weekly values. And, Sound is still, they haven't hit an all-time high in terms of ETH trading, but they are gaining momentum. And I thought it was noteworthy that, in this market, as YYC said, that, you're seeing corners of adoption, and people listen to music regardless of what interest rates are. So, it seems like that's what's proving out right now.
So how does this work? Like, so this is not JPEGs. This is like sound bites, like music minted as NFTs?
Yeah. I think it's like one NFT per song, and artists are dropping them on the platform, and then you can collect them, but you can also listen for free. So the CEO gave the metaphor of like, you're either collecting vinyl, but it also has a Spotify-esque element in that everyone can still listen. So he's relying on those two. He thinks that is real utility, that combining those two, kind of the collectible aspect also with like the free social aspect. He thinks there's something there. So awesome. We'll see how it goes.
So I guess a competitor to Audius, which has been trying to do this, like.
Yeah, I'm not sure how Audius has been doing. But Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think he was like a hardcore shipper. He like doesn't tweet very much, but he was like, "Thank you for caring," because he was always
Nice.
heads down. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I just love this use case of, our artists being able to monetize their work with NFTs. So, we've seen it with, I guess like graphic art with PFPs and all of that. So cool to see music NFTs picking up as well. Okay, then there were a couple of tech updates. Gnosis also moved to proof of stake, which it's the chain of this, like one of the most popular wallets in DeFi. This wallet that allows multi-sigs. So, Alex, you wanna tell us what this was about?
Yeah. So Ethereum was proof of work, is now proof of stake. Gnosis was proof of authority, which I'm not super familiar with, and is now proof of stake as well. And there were two primary benefits of making this jump. One is it dramatically increased the decentralization of Gnosis. So it goes from having 20 validators to 100,000 now, making the third most decentralized after Ethereum and Bitcoin. Just as important probably is that it makes Gnosis, it's going to allow Gnosis to keep up with Ethereum in terms of compatible with Ethereum. I mean, there are a lot of layer one blockchains that are compatible with Ethereum. EVM compatible is the term. And with the merge that Ethereum went through to being proof of stake, future upgrades to it those features might not be compatible with these other EVM chains. And so with Gnosis making this jump, essentially it's going to continue being something where, kind of moving between the two chains isn't going to be super difficult for users and developers. They gave an example. So an upcoming upgrade for Ethereum, technical term, EIP 4844. It's supposed to just allow the roll-ups on Ethereum like Optimism and Arbitrum to scale by a factor of about 100 relative to what they're capable of doing now. And this isn't something that's going to be like other EVM compatible chains aren't going to be able to take advantage of this when it drops. I think right now the estimate is sometime toward the latter half of next year. So that's why they did it. It's cool to see that there was another merge that it also seems to have gone off without a hitch. Props to the developers. When we were talking about this endlessly back in August and September, the Ethereum merge, the analogy that everybody used was changing a plane's engine mid-flight. It's super hard to do, and they did it. So that's really cool.
Nice, yeah. And and if this will become, it looks like it'll be a requirement for many other app chains that want to interact with Ethereum. So we might see more of these coming up. More switches to proof of stake. And yeah, it looks like proof of stake is becoming almost like a standard. I don't see many other, big layer ones besides Bitcoin on, using proof of work anymore. So interesting trend there. And speaking of Ethereum, there was also this update to the Ethereum roadmap. So really interesting. It looks like Ethereum developers have decided to prioritize ETH withdrawals in the next update, and which means that will delay the implementation of the surge, which was the next step on this multi-step roadmap and an upgrade to Ethereum. So I think most ETH holders will agree with this. I think this has been the main concern since the merge, is when will stakers be able to withdraw their ETH? It's, basically having a lot of money locked up. So I think this is the main thing to watch for next year, for when ETH withdrawals are enabled. And so it looks like Ethereum devs are prioritizing this. I don't know if anyone kind of has been following this story more closely, if there's like anything to add.
I mean, go ahead.
Oh, I just wonder if people are going to sell. We'll have to wait and see, but maybe we should reach out to some people before that goes live.
Yeah, is there like a markets-based way of telling what stakers are planning to do? Like maybe in options market, or I don't know. Like,
yeah, you can see what people are betting on for sure. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's still the withdrawal queue, right? So it's going to be, we'd be able to see that once it goes live. Okay, how many people want to unstake, right? And if it turns out to be like the queue is maxed out, then we know, okay, people want to like get out and dump it. I mean, that's the logical assumption, right? Yeah. Because for them to be able to restake again, they'd have to get back in the queue. So it doesn't make sense to like just take it out for no reason.
Yeah.
My understanding is that queue, though, like it would be slow to move through the queue. That everybody who's staking right now could not. I mean, and that's the, that's why there's a queue, but that like whatever dumping of ETH might follow the enabling of withdrawals would happen very slowly over time because of that queue, because unstaking is not exactly an instantaneous process. So do I have that right? YYC?
Yeah, this estimate might be off now, like depending on like how the numbers have changed. But the last one I saw was that if everyone who's staked in the Beacon chain wants to unstake, it would take like a year and a half or 2 years to get all that ETH out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Assuming that they all kind of push the button on day one saying we want to enter the queue. Right. So
yeah.
I mean, that's a bit unnerving as a staker, that you can't get your money out when you want it.
I mean, come on, we're in it for the tech, right? Who needs the ETH back?
I mean, if you're staking, you're also in it for the yield. So
yeah, we're in it for the tech.
You can withdraw your staking rewards and like block rewards, etc. That you get. Those can be withdrawn, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just that your initial stake is kind of in limbo until you get through the queue. And this is one of the main criticisms of like Ethereum staking, right? Along with being completely centralized in the hands of like Coinbase and Lido, etc. So yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out.
Okay, so the main places to watch whether there is for whether stakers are planning to unstake is the stake queue. What else do you think? Like these staking derivatives are giving like a good gauge on that?
I mean, they could, but those are liquid anyway, right? So anyone wants to dump it, they already can or have.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like there's a degree to which the way they hold the peg kind of mirrors sentiment over just being able to eventually withdraw, right? Like before or after the merge, the difference between the price of Lido's staked ETH and ETH narrowed because the merge worked. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden the confidence in the capability of this development team and of the likelihood that withdrawals would eventually happen grew, the gap narrowed. So it
Yeah, you could see
if that ships it that way.
Yeah. If that upgrade ships, you would maybe expect the gap between those two to narrow even further.
Right.
I mean, honestly, it just comes down to the market. If the number's going up, no one's going to unstake, and it's the other way around. It's like sentiment, right? And this is what plays on investors' psychology, right? Buy low, sell high, but everyone usually does the opposite. So
Yeah. Okay, and then finally, we also looked at what Vitalik was writing and tweeting this week. He was pretty active. Really interesting post from him, the Ethereum founder. So he wrote a post on what is exciting him the most in crypto, and we made a video about it. So if you guys want like a quick roundup of these things, go check out the video, 5 things that excite Vitalik. And here we did a bit of a dive on how Vitalik is urging DeFi to embrace real world assets.
Yeah. So I mean, Cami already said the main point, that Vitalik in his post about what was exciting him in crypto emphasized just money is still king. The ability to transact with crypto native assets is still one of the key things we're looking for. And he broke out stablecoins into 3 different categories. So you have centralized stablecoins like USDC, and then governance minimized stablecoins, which are backed by crypto assets like LUSD on Liquidity. And then he also categorized DAI. I thought I was kind of surprised by this, which is MakerDAO's stablecoin, as a DAO governed real world asset backed stablecoin. And he was pushing for DeFi to embrace generally using to go towards real world asset backed stablecoins, which I think he thought would, I'm not sure, I think be a good trade off between centralized stablecoins and then entirely crypto dependent ones. And so yeah, I thought that was an interesting take by Vitalik. And I know there's been pushback from Maker to move away from real world assets, but I mean overall I think crypto's interfacing with the real world seems like it seems like an inevitable direction to some point. And I mean the ability to actually like trade stocks or trade stock indices on crypto platforms feels like kind of fundamental utility that we're missing. So that was the first thing. I mean, yeah, and he went through, or Vitalik went through other things he was stoked on, which is the identity ecosystem, more work with DAOs. I'm particularly excited to see how different DAO structures work out. And that kind of brings up to the next update, which was, I think Vitalik did end up critiquing DAO governance in terms of allowing the token's value be tied to its democratic utility. And it was an interesting take because, I mean, there's this whole, you look at some of the votes for some of these, major DeFi projects, and you realize that like 4% of people are participating, and those 4% of the tokens are participating, and those are held by, a handful of like 6 or 7 people, and they're kind of pushing through the votes. So I could understand his feeling that, at present, governance token based voting may not have the most equitable design so far, and so he's pushing for that, to move away from that. So yeah, I don't know, I think it's interesting because then it's like, if these tokens are neither good for governance nor are they allowed to accrue any kind of yield, especially because of regulatory concerns, it's kind of like, what happens with tokens? And I think there's a lot of answers to that, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, the question there remains is like, where do these tokens accrue any value? I think the expectation has always been that because you have governance abilities or powers in these protocols, that token holders would eventually one day be able to vote to have some sort of dividend distributed, or like some fee, kind of like what we're seeing in Uniswap.
Yeah.
And that's where value comes from. It's kind of this expectation that at some point there will be more regulatory clarity and token holders will be able to get some degree of yield or dividend. But I think that's what Vitalik is criticizing is that in the end it's that's one kind of not clear whether it's going to happen, and in the end benefits is like very small percentage of users, right?
Yeah, and I think we have the story to Joke DAO linked, but I think that's an interesting way to kind of separate the idea of tokens from value necessarily, and Joke DAO kind of spins up tokens on a per vote basis. So I think there's a lot to explore in terms of what tokens mean even. So we'll see. I know Optimism is doing interesting experiments too. So.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of, it's clear that tokenomics haven't been resolved yet. Like, we've had like different iterations, like utility tokens in 2017, 2018, like tokens literally being used like cash in a protocol, like to buy like the service that they're providing. This time around, there was like this governance token trend. So I think we still need a couple more iterations until we figure out exactly, what the right way to use these tokens are. I think there is definitely real kind of valid reasons for protocols to have their own tokens, but again, I don't think tokenomics have been like resolved very well yet. Okay, so I think those were the main stories that we covered this week. Again, like we publish them in our daily newsletter. So you guys should all subscribe to the Defiant newsletter. We have our premium newsletters with DeFi Alpha, with the podcast transcript. So it's really worth it, like with just $15 a month to become a subscriber. You get a lot of additional content and premium perks to get more alpha out of DeFi. And we are publishing our daily videos covering the news as well. And speaking of videos, we are launching, or not launching, we're publishing our first big story video this Saturday at noon Eastern. It's a great video. It's a documentary on Tornado Cash and the arrest of Alexei Pertsev. Unnerving, to say the least, to see this open source, coder be arrested while SBF is still running around in the Bahamas. So stay tuned for that. It's an amazing production. So let's check that out. That's published tomorrow, Saturday. And with that, we'll wrap up. I hope everyone has a great Friday, a great weekend, and thank you all for joining us.
See you guys.